Thanks for joining me today. I have Craig Parry, who's CEO of IsoEnergy. Thanks for joining me today, Craig.
Thanks, Deborah. Good to be with you.
Yeah, it's nice to see you. It's been a while. I think that we first met only a few years ago, but we knew of each other from way back in the Next Gen days. But I don't think that we actually met in person until maybe 4-ish years ago.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
And so I've been following you and IsoEnergy since you spun out from Next Gen. Maybe you can take us through the story a little bit, why Next Gen chose to spin out these assets and what the game plan is.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I was a co-founder there with Lee and Lee Courier, CEO of Next Gen, and Chris McFadden back in 2012. And we established that company to firstly explore for assets, but we were also looking at acquiring major producing assets in uranium. We had our heart set on becoming a major uranium producer. And Lee and the team there, of course, met with success back in 2013, discovered the Arrow deposit, and of course all of our time, energy, dollars and effort went into drilling that deposit out and advancing it through studies. So in about 2015-16, we recognised as a board that we had a number of other assets and opportunities there out in the Eastern Athabasca, which is arguably the most prospective place on the planet for high-grade uranium deposits. And those assets weren't getting any love or attention there. So I moved my family across to Vancouver from Australia in 2016. We spun those assets out for stock to IsoEnergy. We raised $8 million then, a lot more money than our competitors, I suppose, were raising at that time, in large part because of the success that we'd had there with NextGen. We could do a lot more than some of the other companies in the space at the time. Spun those out, we listed them on the TSXV and set about expanding, we're continuing the strategy we had there at NextGen of looking around the world for other high quality assets and also expanding our footprint on the eastern part of the Athabasca Basin. And back in 2018, the strategy started paying off. We discovered our high-grade Hurricane deposit, which is the latest significant high-grade discovery in the Athabasca Basin.
Gotcha. Well, I've always found it very interesting. You talk about looking around the world for assets, but really both you and NextGen have been focused only in the Athabasca, at least from what I've seen. And I've always found it funny that a group of Australians that were private equity backed came over to Canada to essentially explore and discover some of the highest grade uranium deposits in the world.
Yeah. It is, it's an interesting one. And whenever we look around at other assets in other parts of the world, we spent a lot of time looking in Australia for assets, plenty of time in the US. We always find ourselves drawn back to the Athabasca Basin because it is home of the highest grade deposits. And I suppose back in when we started NextGen, we acquired a property called the Radio property, which was right next door to Hathor's Rough Rider. Yeah, and that while we were doing that deal, things were heating up there at Rough Rider, and not long after we started NextGen, Rough Rider got sold to Rio Tinto for $600 million. So we knew we were in the right place at the right time. And then, Lee did a tremendous job of building up a bigger package of properties and made that Arrow discovery, of course. If you like uranium, doesn't matter where you live or who you are, you want to be in the Athabasca Basin is our view. So hence we're here.
If my memory serves me correctly, Arrow's higher grade and less deep than Rough Rider and under less water. Is that correct?
It's much bigger, certainly much higher grade. And I suppose what we've done there at Arrow is we've proven that these basement-hosted deposits can be very, very large and very high grade. And I think that hadn't been appreciated in the basin before that discovery. Fission next door at PLS were proving up a substantial deposit, but really Arrow is the first of the true tier 1 basement hosted deposits, much bigger than Rough Rider, and so a little bit of geology there. I guess most deposits in the Eastern Athabasca that have been found so far are unconformity related deposits. and Arrow's a basement-hosted deposit, so it's amenable to conventional underground mining, which has been important in that story as well. So it ticks a few boxes, but key there is that it's very large. It's a true tier 1 asset, and it's very, very high grade, extraordinarily high grade.
And now it's much more progressed and developed than Rough Rider.
Exactly. Yeah, no, Rough Rider's sort of stalled. We don't mind the look. We like the look of Rough Rider. Certainly a substantial high-grade deposit, very close to McLean Lake Mill, a little bit like our Hurricane deposit. But I think that absolutely Arrow, NextGen's Arrow, will be the next mine developed in the basin.
Okay, so let's talk about your assets. Let's go to the Eastern Athabasca. You've got a number of different projects there. What's your favorite? What are you focused on? Tell us a little bit about what you're doing.
Yeah, sure. So, when we took those assets out of NextGen and put them into ISO, importantly, we did that for stock. So NextGen retains a serious shareholding. NextGen's our 52% share owner in ISO. So that's been important.
And they have consistently kept that shareholding. They've played pro rata on your financing since?
Yeah, absolutely. They've got no intrinsic right to do that, or there's no agreement in place, but certainly Lee and the team and board at NextGen are now very happy with what they're doing. So I think NextGen's contributed over $5 million in financings in the past 18 months, and will continue to do so, we think. So that's going well. But we took five license areas in the Eastern Athabasca out of NextGen, and we've now expanded that footprint massively. We continue to do deals with the majors, state ground, and there's a couple of things there that we like to talk about in that eastern half of the basin. Arrow's proven itself to be, I think, what is undoubtedly the best uranium deposit ever discovered. It's massive, it's high grade, it's amenable to low-cost conventional underground mining. So it ticks all those boxes. That eastern half of the Athabasca Basin has never, ever really been explored for those deposits, not in any material way. And so, and we think absolutely the eastern half is just as prospective, if not better, more prospective than the western half of the basin. So we think that there will absolutely be Arrow deposits on the eastern half of the basin. It just hasn't been explored for. So we're out there, we're putting our foot on as much of the ground as we can and getting in and drilling under the unconformity, looking for those Arrow type deposits. And then the other part of the story, the strategy, if you like, is that of course a huge amount of money was raised during that last uranium boom and through to 2010. And a lot of that money went into first pass drilling in the Eastern Athabasca, a little bit of second pass drilling, but mostly first pass drilling. And a lot of those holes intercepted mineralisation or alteration or elevated radioactivity. And because of Fukushima in 2011, the industry ran out of money all at the same time. And that left a huge number of mineralised intercepts that have never been followed up. No one's had the money or inclination to do it. And it wasn't really until we came along that we've really been aggressive on following up those things. So we've got a larger area, a larger land position now, a lot of mineralised holes there that could be tantamount to a discovery hole and just need follow-up. And back in 2018, that strategy started to pay off for us. We acquired a property called our Rock East property off Cameco in late May 2018 for $300,000 worth of stock and $20,000 in cash. We had Steve Blower, our Vice President of Exploration, who joined us from Denison. He was the head of exploration and had led the team to discover Denison's Griffin deposit. Steve had a drill rig on the ground at La Rock East 6 weeks after we announced that deal with Cameco. And 2 weeks after that, we announced the discovery of our Hurricane deposit. So that's, that's gone tremendously well. The strategy's really, really sort of paid off. And of course, we've been there ever since. We've now, we've drilled 53 holes there. We put out some of the most spectacular drill results in the past couple of years over this last few months with our winter drill campaign. One of the first holes we drilled back in January hit 8.5 metres at 34% U3O8. that included 4 metres or 5 metres, I should say, at 57% U3O8. If you look at, if anyone, if you follow the OPAX reports, those guys collate, compile, and compare global drill results each year, and we're still sitting at number one in terms of we've got the number, that hole is the number one drill hole in any commodity in any part of the world this year so far. So we're getting some truly spectacular high grade results. We've just put out a slew of those sorts of results from that deposit. So look, the strategy's paying off. We've now got to focus a key flagship project. I think we're convinced that we'll be moving that project through resource into studies and on into development at some point in the next couple of years. So that's where we're focused at the moment. And backing that up, we've got a whole bunch of other excellent exploration properties that will follow up as well.
Okay, so just backing up a little bit, because you said something that I think is really interesting. A lot of the investors that we work with are generalists, or they are mining investors, but they probably haven't looked at this sector since maybe the 2008 run-up or Fukushima. So maybe you can talk to us a little bit about what a uranium exploration hole, like what percentage is good, what you look for, how would you compare it to a gold drill hole? Like how would somebody that doesn't know anything about uranium know that 57% is a good hole?
Yeah, good question. And I'd encourage people to look at that OPAX, OPAXE.com website and see their reports. They do a very good job of comparing in gold equivalent terms all sorts of commodities and drill results around the world. So that's a sort of good starter. But to give you an example, the second best hole for the year so far has been one of the Cisco's holes. They drilled 2.5 metres at 900 grams per tonne gold. Now our hole's 50% better than that drill hole on their rating. So, points to the high grade nature. But if the exchange and regulators here don't like you doing this, but you make a good point. A lot of people have forgotten a lot about uranium or don't know much about it. But if you'd have put that hole 32A, our best hole to date in gold equivalent terms, so 8.5 metres at 34% U3O8, gold equivalent terms, that's 8.5 metres at 320 grams per tonne gold, so 10 ounce per tonne gold. So extraordinarily high grades, and that's what the Athabasca Basin's known for, is these, is some of the richest, highest value rock on the planet. Cigar Lake, that's being mined at the moment, or it has been mined by Cameco until 3 weeks ago when COVID-related issues shut it down. That dirt is $20,000 per tonne dirt that they're extracting there. So, there's no higher grade mineral deposits in the world.
I think regardless of commodity, grade is always king.
Grade is always king, absolutely, and that's why we love, the Athabasca. The average mine grade of uranium around the world is sort of 0.5% or less. In the Athabasca, the average mine grade is more than 10%. So it's an order of magnitude, if not 2 orders of magnitude, higher grade than other uranium jurisdictions around the world.
Great. Well, I'm not going to bore your audience with asking about supply and demand, although that's such a hot topic right now, because you do have a number of interviews that you've done recently that cover that, and we've got a couple as well. What I would really like to ask you, though, because you are a true uranium junior explorer, how do you drill a hole for uranium? Like, how does that?
Yeah, good question. Well, look, if you're not drilling uranium, you don't have to worry too much. You don't need any particular protocols. We diamond drill in our Hurricane deposit. We're diamond drilling out there, which means you're not blowing dust. You've got to keep everything very wet and wetted down. But when you get that hot core, we distribute it. The guys usually know that it's hot uranium laden core because it's very heavy. Incredibly heavy. That goes to our hot core shack. It has ventilation protocols. Our team all wear radioactivity dosimeters, and that's been a challenge with some of these high grade holes. You have to wear face masks, you wear gloves, you've got a series of protocols when you're changing and moving from hot core areas to clean core areas. So there's a number of things you have to do. Outside of that, you don't treat this any different to any other product, but you do seal that core up when you're sampling it and cutting it. But in recent times, the very high grade nature of those holes has meant that our geological team dose out regularly, so they get their maximum amount of radioactive dosage that they can take, which is considerably less than a pilot will take on any given long haul flight. But we've got to manage that situation very carefully. So they can only spend about an hour at a time with those very high grade drill holes before they've got to step away from the shack and wait another day before they can get back in and log again. That's
interesting. Well, it's a very unique commodity. And like I said, it's been a while since I've done any work in the space, and I'm now getting sort of up to speed, and I forgot how exciting it can be and how interesting. And so certainly a lot of characters in the sector, yourself included, which has been a pleasure to get to know over the last few years. We actually didn't talk about your background at all. Do you want to give a little summary of your work history, and then I'll have one more question, we'll wrap it up.
Sure, no worries at all. So, I'm an exploration geologist by trade, albeit that I sort of moved into the corporate realm.
That explains the beard.
That explains. Well, the COVID explains the beard. I'm testing the COVID beard, but it's got to go. It's starting to annoy me immensely.
Me too.
But so I spent 8 years with Rio Tinto exploration in various different roles around the world. Started off in Western Australia looking for iron ore and diamonds. They moved me to Chile for a couple of years, Antofagasta looking for copper. Then China for a couple of years heading up our copper exploration there. And then finally, before I left, I had a global role in charge of looking for iron ore projects and Project Gen for iron ore. Before my very last role, which was 3 months of, actually 6 months of work on a pre-feasibility study for the Kintyre uranium project in Western Australia, and that piqued my interest in uranium. I then left and joined Oxiana briefly, and from there went out with Owen Hegarty, who was the founder and CEO of Oxiana, and Tony Manini, and we set up the Tigers Realm group of companies. So that included a number of companies. NextGen was one of the things that we were very fortunate to seed up and help get started. And we also started a private equity business called EMR Capital, and I'm still involved in EMR there as a partner, albeit that I'm not active, but I'm still the shareholder and general partner there at EMR. So, and that's gone very well. EMR's got now over 2 billion of funds and 6 billion of assets under management. So that's become a serious business in its own right. And outside of that, we started a number of other companies. I was the CEO of our coal business, Tigers Realm Coal. We built a coal mine in Far Eastern Russia, among other things. So, and then, today it's IsoEnergy. We've got a number of other sort of entrepreneurial pursuits, but ISO is my main focus, and, very, very fortunate that we've made a discovery and that it's going very well at the right time as this market really picks up and kicks off.
It does look like we're at the start of a sustained bull market for uranium. So thanks for your time. One last thing, can you give us 3 to 5 catalysts for IsoEnergy, what we can look for and what we can expect over the coming months?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, we've been very active staking, so we continue to grow our ground position there in the Athabasca. We announced more results on that front today. We'll be putting out some news on wrapping up our view of the results of the winter program shortly as well, and then we're getting ready to drill come summer, and that's the main catalyst. When we get back on the ground, we'll be drilling in and around. We haven't closed off the deposit yet in most directions. Certainly along on the section. So we've got a number of drill holes to do that. So we'll be drilling in and around these very high grade zones we've got. So we're confident that we'll have very good news flow when we get back out there in summer, which is probably, we'll be there mid-July. And then, we'll accelerate as quickly as we can to announcing a maiden resource. Of course, that maiden resource was what drove NextGen from about 60 cents a share to $3 a share. So we want to get to that point as quickly as we can. So look out for that sometime early next year, I would say. And then on into studies. And then the external catalysts, we've seen the uranium price rocket from $23.50 a pound to $34 a pound today in the past month. 45% gain, best performing commodity this year. It's only just the start. It's really just the threat of, those COVID-19 related closures driving up the uranium price that much. It's been announcements of closures that have done that. When that product really disappears from the market over the next month or two, that's when we'll see the price really start to move. So I'd encourage people to look very close at the uranium price. I think the price rise that we've seen so far isn't reflected in the equities yet, but it's building and coming. And as you see that price continue to rise, you'll see more and more generalist funds come into the space. We've been inundated with interest in the last couple of weeks. This has been the busiest I've been on investor relations since setting up the company 4 years ago. So interest is building. Equities are about to move, we think.
Well, that's great to hear. Thank you for taking the time. You've had some incredible successes that are really well deserved, and I wish you continued success. And I'm looking forward to having you present next week to do a full webinar so we can all get to know everything there is to know about IsoEnergy.
Good on you, Deb. No, real pleasure, and looking forward to that next week as well.